So hello everyone, welcome to today's Ask the Expert session as part of the Partners Summer School. My name's Kate, I'm one of the careers consultants at Newcastle University, and I'm joined by Kathy, George and Anya today, who are going to be giving us a talk on their time at university and their careers to date within this field and using their history, classics or archaeology degree. So what we're going to do is have those talks in the first half of the session, and then we'll be handing over to you at the end for the second half of the session, which is our Q&A. So without further ado, Kathy, I'm going to hand over to you for your talk.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I am Kathy. I am originally from not too far from Newcastle. I'm from Alnwick. So when I was choosing unis, I was kind of like, I don't want to go too far. I still want to get into the best uni that I can. So I picked Newcastle, and I picked combined honours of ancient history and archaeology. This is because A-levels I studied art, English, history and classics. Got my best grades always in history, but there was something about classics. Even though my grades weren't great in it, something about it. I went on holiday to Rome when I was 16 and was just basically obsessed with Rome, probably to quite a weird level, I'd say. So I decided to study ancient history and archaeology. And the great thing about that was during my first year, I did modules in ancient history, classics, history and archaeology. So I got to try, even though they're all very similar, they're actually all quite different in the way they're taught and the way the exams work. So I could kind of figure out what suited me the most. All I can say is history modules did not work very well for me at all, but archaeology did, and so did ancient history. So as the years went on through my degree, I could kind of figure out what my strengths were and what I actually enjoyed a bit more. That was my undergraduate. I started in 2011. So I started, oh my God, like 11 years ago. I don't feel old enough to have been at uni 11 years ago, but that's how old I am now. Studied my master's after that because I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do. So I decided I'd stay at uni for another year because I got the grades to get into a master's. So I studied Roman and Byzantine archaeology because by this point I realised archaeology is what I really loved and Romans were my thing. During that year, I've got to say, if you're going to go on to do a master's, it's very intense, but very, very rewarding. There's a close-knit group of you. Well, in archaeology there was anyway, because it's not the biggest subject. But I got some really good opportunities during that year. I got a paid internship at the Great North Museum, which in the museum work is kind of unheard of, but that was through the help of my lecturers. They recognised that is something that I was interested in, and they set it up for me essentially. I got a lot of excavation experience as well. If you're doing archaeology, I think it's 6 weeks that you've got to do during your undergraduate. But during my master's, I chose to do an extra month, which was just so much fun. Not only are you learning so much, but like you're in this group, you're all living in the same house or near each other, and you go to the pub every night and you just make amazing friends while you're doing it. So I'd highly recommend that if you're doing archaeology. Well, you have to do it, but it's fun. And I was also beauty editor of the newspaper while I was there, which was really nice to do something different, essentially. And also learned some software skills, which bizarrely I've gone on to use in archaeology in my career. So it was actually quite helpful. So post-uni, this is 2016 when I finished, I did what a lot of students have done before they go to uni or just after. I went solo backpacking by myself. Went to Southeast Asia, Australia and New Zealand, bumped into a lot of people from uni while I was there. So we're all very much the same, doing the same route. We're not that individual, but maybe did find myself, not entirely sure, but it was an amazing experience. I think it probably did change me going traveling by myself, really pushed me out of my comfort zone. And I'm definitely a much more confident person now because I was put into situations that I would just never have put myself into before. So ended up in New Zealand, absolutely fell in love with the country, and wanted to do a year working there. So that was all I ever planned to do, one of these working holiday visas, which so many people do for Australia and New Zealand. But while I was there, I thought, you know what, I should try and do some archaeology while I'm here. It's what I want to do long term. And I sent out a few letters and emails to local unis, and they passed that on to a company. And they interviewed me, and I got a job as an archaeologist in New Zealand and ended up staying for just shy of 3 years. So I did enjoy it very much so. I got some amazing opportunities when I was there. I got to present at a conference for Australian and New Zealand archaeologists, my own research, which was so nerve-wracking. But like looking back, I'm like, that's just amazing that I was doing that at like 23 years old. I was the main author on the post-Christchurch regeneration projects. There was a massive earthquake there, so loads of archaeology was done afterwards. I was the main author of that, and I worked on one of the biggest archaeology projects after the Kaikoura earthquake, which was just unbelievable, part of such a big project. I love living in a different country and experiencing a different culture. So I would say if you ever get an opportunity to do that, grab it with both hands, because you'll never regret doing it. It's just, for me, it was just one of the best things ever, and learning about the Maori culture, because it's so different to here, and learning a different part of archaeology is so different as well, especially coming from studying Rome and stuff to then digging Maori. It's just completely different. You're digging alongside their ancestors, which is just something we don't experience here, as we don't have the indigenous population. Okay, so next step, I'm going to talk through moving back to London. So I moved back in 2019, because as much as I love New Zealand, my heart lay in the UK. And then I joined the biggest archaeology company called MOLA. It's Museum of London Archaeology, which is very famous within the archaeology community. And I got to work on some unbelievable stuff, really complex Roman archaeology. Oliver Twist's workhouse, the workhouse it was based on, I was digging up bodies there. So I did learn a lot, but the company didn't really suit me. Something didn't feel right. I wasn't getting the training I wanted. And then the pandemic hit, and no one really knew if they had a job anymore, which was pretty scary, because archaeology is linked to construction. We're part of planning conditions. So if they're going to build a building, we go in there first and take all the archaeology out, or as much as needs to be taken out. So had a bit of a risk here and moved to another company, which is called Pre-Construct Archaeology, and PCA. It's one of the biggest ones in England. There's a Durham office, and I'm in the London office, and it's actually really closely linked to Newcastle Uni, because one of the lecturers, James Gerard, he used to work for PCA, and every summer we get Newcastle interns down in London. So if that's something you'd be interested in, coming to see what we actually do, seeing the finds, seeing the office, I'd highly recommend that. So I moved to them during the pandemic. My first site was Westminster Abbey, which was just mind-boggling. It's like one of those once in a lifetime thing. I'm digging up monks' bodies and in the shadow of Westminster Abbey. But to be honest, I feel like I've had quite a few moments like that during my career, where I've been like, God, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I'm digging up a palace, or I'm digging up an abbey, which it's a fun part of the job for sure. So in those 2 years, I've worked my way up from digger, which is like the lowest, all the way up to supervisor. So I started running quite small sites to start with, but now I'm on to much more complex ones in the city, Roman stuff, which is obviously, as I previously mentioned, my favorite thing ever. So I've been running those, and then I go on to write the report. So I have a team of about 15 people. They do the digging. I tell them how I want things done, write the report, and then that will go on to be made into a publication, which I'll get to write. So even though I'm working in the construction industry, it's actually very academic still. If you work your way up and you want to be on that side of things, which is what I wanted to be doing. I want to be going to conferences, speaking. I want to be giving towards all this research and then applying all this stuff that I learned in university, and making that move from one company to another, even though this other company is the most famous one that's meant to be the great one. Making this switch and taking that risk actually has really paid off for me. So I would say my biggest advice with that would be, even if someone's telling you it's the right thing to do, you've got to listen to what's right for you and what's actually going to progress for you. So basically that's where I'm at now. I'm now a supervisor for PCA. So might see some of you in the future if you come to the London office, which would be very nice. But I always say that I've been really lucky with all my jobs. Like everything's always seems to have just fallen into place for me. And to an extent, yes, I am lucky. Like there's always going to be that element of luck, but there's also putting in hard work, putting yourself in the right situation so you see those opportunities, and just working to stand out, because I am a strong believer in I've had all these opportunities because I work hard. So you need to put yourself into those situations in the first place. And the main thing for when you're at uni in the first year is try as much as possible and see where your strengths lie. Because if you're actually good at it, it's just going to be so much easier. And that's why in the first year I did loads of random things, loads of things that I wasn't sure if I was going to be interested in or not. And then that paid off because you could see my grades go up throughout the 3 years. And then during my masters, it was all, I tailored it all to what I knew I was good at. And then obviously that I reaped the benefits as time's gone on. And that is pretty much it.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Kathy. That was really insightful and very interesting. Lots of things to learn and things to hear about. We're going to jump over to Anya next, who is another graduate of Newcastle University and has actually done some work with the Career Service previously as an intern. So Anya, I'm going to hand over to you to take us through your talk.
Thanks, Kate. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm just going to talk to you about my time at university and then talk about my career today. As I'm 3 years out of university, the career isn't that long, but yeah, I'll tell you what I do now. So I did politics and history at university. Always wanted to do history. I'd done 17th century Britain and Russia at college, did France and did a lot outside of the usual World War II. So I knew I really loved history. So chose to do history. I added politics because I was interested in it, but I had very little self-belief and didn't think I'd get the grades to do straight history. So applied to the combined or joint course, which actually was a really good decision. I could have actually got into the straight history, but there's a lesson, a personal lesson that, believe in yourself. But history and politics was great, and it's a really good combination, and they go hand in hand, as you'd expect. So I always wanted to go to Newcastle, and it's a fantastic uni. I'm from the northeast, so very proud to be from there and to have stayed in the northeast. Whilst I was at uni, I was involved in the History Society, which is welcome to people who do study history and don't study history, and there's some brilliant trips and lots of socials as well, so I'd thoroughly recommend that. But it was also a great opportunity to get back into some things that I'd done in the past. So whilst I was growing up, I used to dance, and I had to stop because of injuries, but this gave me an opportunity to get back into dancing. I did it socially, so there wasn't any pressures to be really competitive, but yeah, it was a great way to meet people. Also, I got involved in netball with the History Society. Met some great friends there, and it was competitive because we were quite a good team, but it still had that social fun element to it. So yeah, some really good social things that I got involved with, but as we hear on the partners talk, we'll discuss careers. However, on that point, something that I would thoroughly recommend getting involved with is summer schools. Fantastic opportunity to meet new people and help mentor younger people. So as in you guys now. So I did 5 summer schools in total. So I would totally recommend applying to be a summer school rep during your first year, and you'll probably love it. That honestly, everyone loves being a rep and wearing that green t-shirt. Whilst I was at university, I did a placement year. So that is a year that you take out of university in between your second year and third year, and you go and work. You go and do a job, a 9-to-5 job. Massive difference from doing a history degree where you, in my second year, I think I did about 9 hours a week. It's all self-led, independent study. But I would, again, thoroughly recommend a placement year. It's absolutely fantastic. It taught me soft skills, working skills that you don't get whilst you're at university. And it gave me that little advantage over people who were graduating at the same time as me, because I had that year of work experience and I could give real life examples of what I did. However, that's not for everyone, and you could do jobs whilst you're at university. You could do internships, you could work part-time. Taking that year out isn't for everyone, and appreciate it's a big decision. You have to leave friends from second year and take that year out and then rejoin a cohort of students who you didn't know most of before you left. So whilst I was in third year, as Kate said, I worked for the Career Service and actually promoted placement year. So what I'm saying, I actually believe, and it was my job for a year. So did that at uni, and it also helped to get a job after, as I had that had experience and continued to work, which shows that work ethic. It shows that you're motivated to the employers when you apply to jobs. So when I left university, I went and worked for EY in Newcastle. So EY Newcastle is a Big Four firm, and that is the Big Four. If you aren't aware, it includes Deloitte, PwC, EY, and KPMG. So they're the Big Four auditing firms who have the large share of the industry, and are the big players. So I went to EY and worked in service delivery, and I got put onto a cyber project. And at first I was like, cybersecurity is not for me. No, get me off this project. It's just not something that I'm ever going to be interested in. However, it's not that easy to just demand that you want to move when you've just started a job. So worked on a couple of cybersecurity projects and just fell in love with it, which is quite similar to a lot of women in technology and cybersecurity. You kind of just fall into it. As you'd expect, it's a very male-dominated industry. And yeah, in my job now, still surrounded by males. And it's a case of picking up skills with how to deal with those situations. So I'm sometimes on video calls with 6 people, 5 of them are white men. So being in cybersecurity has taught me coping mechanisms. And it's also led to my passion of diversity and inclusion. So going back to cybersecurity, I started working on an access controls project. I worked with third-party risk management. So you're looking at companies and understanding their cybersecurity setup, their controls, and advising them how they can improve them. Helping them to understand that cybersecurity is so important to helping with your overall business outcomes. If you've got cybersecurity issues that then impact the business and possibly stop operations, you can't achieve your wider goals and ambitions. So I worked at EY for 18 months, but it just wasn't where my future lay. I wanted a bit more of a challenge, and I'd always considered moving to London. So in June 2021, I got the job that I'm in now, and I work for a company called Control Risks, and it's a global risk advisory, and I work in cybersecurity. Leaving EY enabled me to specialise in cybersecurity. So I work in incident response, which involves when a company has an incident, and that's a cyber attack, a data breach, they'll contact their insurer, and then their insurer we're the incident response providers, and we navigate them and help them through this incident. So you might have a company who someone's logged onto the system, try to get onto their laptop, and they see this ransom note that says, we've encrypted all your files, meaning they are inaccessible. You need to give us some money, and then we'll give you access to these files again. So you have an employee who is in a state of shock, thinking, what has just happened? What have I done wrong? It's not always often not the fault of the person who's logged onto the system first. It's just that they found it. So yeah, they're hit by this ransom note. What should we do? How do we pay? We need to recover operations. We can't do anything right now until we have data back, we have our files back. We are completely stumped as business, is worst case scenario. So we help them navigate through this incident. We help them to decide whether they want to pay this ransom. We help them investigate the incident to understand how it's happened, understand whether there could be a data leak in which company and personal data is leaked onto the deep and dark web. So we do deep and dark web monitoring for our clients. And there are many different work streams that are involved in a crisis like this. And I am the crisis manager, so I'm the point of contact for the for the client. And cybersecurity, honestly, it's so interesting. Not something I ever thought I'd be interested in, but there's so many different aspects to it. You know, you can do the incident response, which is helping people. You can do the other side, which is preventing the incidents. You can do the investigating into the incidents, many different things. And I think it's with the industry at the moment, it's growing and it will continue to grow. So I think it's something that there'll always be jobs in, or for the foreseeable future, there'll be jobs and there'll be demand for people to work in cybersecurity and roles. So yeah, I would advise having a look at it, seeing if it's something for you. And obviously, with a history background, it's not something that goes hand in hand. You wouldn't think, oh, history, cybersecurity. It's often you think engineering, computer science, going to cybersecurity. But the skills you get from your history degree, communication skills, time management, independence, all those kinds of things, they're transferable to any kind of job. And if you can demonstrate a passion for cybersecurity and a real interest, that definitely helps you to stay motivated within a job, then this can be something for you. Yeah, that's an overview of me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Anya. That was really insightful, and it's always really good for our students here to see that, you know, even going through a history and politics degree yourself, you know, you've ended up somewhere that you would never have envisioned embarking on that degree. And there's just such a huge range of options and so many skills that you get from sort of studying in these types of areas that you can transfer into so many different environments. So I'm sure we'll get some really interesting questions for you about that and your placement years and all the wonderful things that you've done. But we're going to hand over to George first to tell you a little bit about his time at university and what he's gone on to do since his degree.
Cheers, Kate. Afternoon, everyone. So I'm George. I studied ancient history and archaeology at Newcastle back in 2015, finished in 2018, I think, and then rolled straight into a master's in Greek archaeology. Sort of similar to Kathy, just sort of carried on to absolutely loved it. Whilst I was at university, I was quite keen on getting involved with societies. So in particular, got involved with the Mountaineering Society. I was really into rock climbing, sort of growing up, grew up in the Northwest, where like the peaks in North Wales and Lake Districts are really close. So that's something I really wanted to continue at university. I was really fortunate in that I could go and compete as well. So represented the university at books, so like up in Glasgow and Sheffield, down in London. And it was really cool just sort of traveling around the country with a lot of mates from the society and just competing, and it was just really good fun. And then additionally as well, you'll be amazed at what societies throughout uni that did a lot of first aid qualifications with the wilderness medics. I'm not entirely sure how I got involved with them, so did an archaeology degree. But it was really cool to do sort of like outdoor first aid, heart start, and sort of get qualified in that as well. And then additionally, got quite involved with the Archaeology Society. I think there's a classic society as well that I did archaeology. That's one I spent most of my time with, which was, again, it was epic fun. We sort of went, had a few trips away, went to Dublin, went to Budapest, went to Prague, so they do a trip every year. Where you sort of like, you know, there's a bit of an academic focus to supported by the SU and sort of enabled by the SU as well. But you also get some time to just see the city and have a roam around and stuff, and it's really good fun. Additionally, whilst I was at uni, I was really fortunate. So I actually took part in the British School Athens summer school. This is something that's run first and second year undergraduates. If you do like ancient history, classics, archaeology, I think some historians go on it as well. You go out to Athens for 3 weeks, live at the British school out there, and you sort of do this like intensive summer school week. You tour Greece, you tour like the mainland, the Peloponnese, and you sort of like, you have the director and the assistant director sort of lecturing you like in situ on the sites. But normally you'd be learning about in lectures, which is a really cool experience. I was sort of supporting that. You sort of applied for it. It's a bit of an competitive application process, but so Matthew Haysom and Joe Skinner in the department are both wonderful and like really supported me and put an application in for it. And I was able to extend my time a little bit at the end and just live in Athens for a couple of weeks as well afterwards, which was really good fun and just sort of put what we were learning in lectures into a new context. So I definitely recommend, if anyone is interested in our Greek history or Greek archaeology, like put your name forward for that. It was absolutely wonderful. Whilst I was in my final uni year as well, I actually joined the Army Reserve, which is wonderful. Again, if anyone is sort of interested in that career path, you can join it at 18. It's a great exposure to a different world that I think most people don't always get to see, and the money on the side as well is always welcome. So like as a student, I spent a bit of time, so I did a bit of time with the parachute regiment, so did 3 years with those, and then I transferred over back in November to military intelligence, which is where I am now. So it's really cool to do a bit of an analysis role and sort of see some stuff you don't always get to see. So yeah, if anyone is interested in that, I'd highly recommend have a look. There's University Officer Training Corps, which I didn't take part in, but I'm sure they're wonderful. Or if you just reach out to me, I'm happy to sort of talk through that in a little bit more detail. So sort of leaving university, so at the end of my master's, I didn't actually have anything secured, which was a bit tense to sort of finish my master's in August 2019. So it's a 12-month course. Didn't have a job. So I had no idea what I wanted to do. And a lot of the graduate schemes run on the academic year. So you'd apply sort of September, October time to then start the following September, October. Like I say, for more traditional graduate schemes, I'd missed all them. So I was just enjoying my master's. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I ended up working in a corner shop. And then I moved on to another company in the northeast called Durham Lane. They work out at Silverlink, which is out towards Wallsend. They're a really cool place to work. I think that now they just got voted like the 8th best place to work in the UK or something, like the #1 in the northeast. Always hiring, massively growing. Whilst I was full-time, but there's a number of part-time people there as well who were doing degrees. I think there's a guy doing like an English literature degree at Newcastle Uni. So again, I'd recommend if you have to sort of something on the side, something in addition to these studies, highly recommend looking at them. Really friendly place to work and really great exposure, sort of doing business development, working with clients, sort of contract reviews, and just sort of an insight into that world. But really, that's not where I am now. So September 2019, so just finished my master's, I applied for the civil service fast stream. I say it's a graduate scheme, so they open 12 months before you start. So I applied in September 2019. Application process took me through to like December. I think I had my final assessment centre. It's like a 6-stage application process. Got a job offer in January and then started it in September 2020. And that's sort of when I started with the civil service, which I'm now. And yeah, just reiterate, if you're not going to go on to do a master's, sort of like as you enter your 3rd year, I'd start looking at just sort of putting the feelers out there. We're really laid back. The application processes as well are structured in a way that it doesn't clash with like dissertations or exams. I think some people can be a bit intimidated by that. Would be more drawn out application processes like KPMG and PwC and stuff have. But actually they are quite student friendly in terms of the timetabling. So I wouldn't put it off in a way that I did. But equally, a year out, I found it really, really insightful. Got to do lots of different stuff, and it was quite a cool experience. So in the civil service, I'm on the commercial fast stream, which sort of equates to being responsible for how government spends money and sort of buying stuff for government, and sort of make sure what we're buying for where we work in industry in the different sectors is driving best value and driving efficiencies and quite constructive and delivering for the taxpayer. So it's really cool. It's really sort of big picture strategic planning stuff, which I really enjoy. So in my 1st year, which was last year, I did something called category management. This is quite a die-hard sort of commercial role. You get responsibility for a category of spend right through from like the concept of we need a thing, or we've got this problem with our business, how do we fit it, through to like the contract management and the end of the contract life cycle. So you'll have different people under you, like a contract manager, like legal, stuff like that, and you sort of collate it all, and you're sort of responsible for the big picture and the way you achieve your goal. So that was really cool. I was at Department for Education, looking after ICT, which during sort of 2020, 2021, the different lockdowns and remote education was a really sort of interesting place to work. Lots of different challenges. I never thought I'd get to work on it like 22 years old, whatever I was. And yeah, sort of being at the heart of something that fast-paced was really cool. I learned a lot on sort of the way government works, and you get to work with lots of different stakeholders. So, like, you'd have meetings with like Microsoft, Capita, and sort of look at the way the market's sort of growing and shrinking, so like how that's going to impact what you're doing in 6 to 12 months time. So it's a bit of like projection analysis as well, which I thought was really cool. And yeah, it was quite a good fun year. Worked that, so what you may or may not know is with FastStream you're expected to relocate every 12 months. It is a national scheme, but I worked remotely, as we all were, I think, in 2020. So I stayed in the northeast. I still live in Newcastle now in Gateshead. Moving on from DFE, last September I moved into Cabinet Office, where I'm a policy advisor now. So we actually set the rules and the policies that government abides by and the way we interact with industry. So that's really cool. My portfolio is digital data and technology, which got a bit of background from you before, and then construction infrastructure. So we set the way, like I say, if you're spending over £12 million in money, we set the policy on how that should be spent. And that's really cool to work at heart, like the centre of government. It's all the different departments reporting to you, and you're setting the way they work, and work with them. Like if they've got a problem, if they've got a supplier that's not compliant, we work with them to overcome it and sort of look at lessons learned and how we can improve on that. So it's been a lot of COVID lessons learned, as I'm sure you've seen in the news throughout the year, different court cases and the way that we're learning from that as a government. But also as things are crunching, like inflation, the cost of living crisis, fuel crisis back in October, like the downstream oil protocol, it's been really cool to feed into work like that as well, and sort of look at how we can build more resilience into the different sectors the government operates in, but also for the public as a whole. So we're not just spending taxpayer money, we're trying to make sort of the market just better for the public as a whole. So that's been really cool to work in that space. It's been really sort of the thing about Cabinet Office, with being so central, is that you get to work quite closely with ministers, which is something I never thought I'd get to do again. So I've worked remotely again this year. So my team is based out of Horse in London. I work out of my spare room in Gateshead. But it's been quite cool to work so closely with ministers and sort of get a bit of an insight into their world and sort of the challenges they face, which I didn't even consider half of the stuff I've seen before I started this role, and sort of the way they operate. So that's been really cool to work with them on stuff. I actually found that today, so I'm going into my final year, September 1st. My final year with FastStream, if I sort of like get spat out as a grade 7, which is like managerial level role. I found out today that my final posting is going to be at DWP in London again. Probably not going to work remotely. I might actually move down to London. Sort of big benefit of FastStream, I guess, largely, obviously FastStream has been paused for a year. I don't think it'll affect you guys, sort of the stage you're at. But the civil service broader is like the amount of networks you can get involved with. So these are a bit like societies at university. So I got involved with the science and technology one, the environmental network as well. So I've been doing some really cool work on like carbon net zero and sustainability in construction, which has been really cool to see. The wargaming network, which is sort of like red teaming scenarios. So like you sit and play enemy effectively, but you do it from all sort of angles. So you can do it from like a commercial point of view or policy point of view, where like, or a pandemic point of view, where it's like, if this thing's happened, how will government respond? You sort of go through it and you build in that sort of resilience. Completely hypothetical scenarios, but it's a really cool way to build that skill set. And then, there's just so many different networks to get involved with, especially on diversity and inclusion. So I worked with a group of fast streamers setting up the first generation networks, so we're the first in our families to go to university, and sort of looking at different challenges you might face and the way that could impact you as you move from university into a career. So we've tried to put in place resources and steps to mitigate that for people leaving university who are first generation. So that's been quite good fun to get involved with as well. And then really for you guys, I think at this stage, something I'd be looking into, I'd highly recommend looking into actually, is they're called the EDIP and SDIP. So these are 2 different internship programs run by the civil service. These haven't been paused alongside the FastStream, so these are still running. The paid, you can apply from in your first year. EDIP is run over Easter, SDIP is run over summer, so that's a bit longer term. And they'll give you just an insight. You'll sort of do a 9 to 5 in the civil service. You'll get given sort of a mentor and a fast streamer to work under. and it just lets you develop a lot of those skills that the civil service wants, and they sort of hire off. But also, like, most companies hire in the same way now. They're sort of like behavior focused as opposed to like CV focused. So that insight would be valuable, even if you don't want to work in the public sector. It's also transfers quite nicely to the private sector. So I'd highly recommend getting involved with that. But that's me really. If you got any questions, do please get in touch. Always happy to talk about myself and do this in more detail. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, George. Really insightful. I think, you know, the civil service and public service and that type of thing is such a common destination for a lot of history, classics, archaeology students and politics students as well. So no doubt many in the audience interested in sort of that direction. So I've got time for questions now, and we have had a few come through already. I'm going to scroll right back up and we'll hear from Kathy first. We've got a really good question that's come through asking about, you know, when you are working as an archaeologist, is it actually like what you thought it was going to be? Is it like a typical stereotypical archaeologist role, or is it something different than you originally had thought?
It's nothing like I thought it would be, absolutely nothing. But I think primarily that's because you have two types of archaeologists. You've got rural archaeologists who work out in the countryside, which is actually the vast majority of archaeology. And then you have urban archaeologists, and that's us in the city centre. So we're working on intense building sites. I've usually got a building either coming down or being built around me, which is not what I was prepared for at all. But I love it, and I love working with all these different types of people, and I've learned so many random things about building buildings. And there's currently a skyscraper being built in the city in London, and it's up to about 25 stories at the minute, being built on Fenchurch Street. And I walked past it, I'm like, I don't know what was underneath that. I know what was down there, some Roman amphora, and we were all really stressed trying to get this Roman amphora out the ground in one piece because there was two whole ones, which is super rare. We never find things intact, like ever. So to get those out, I just love walking around London being like, know what's under there, I know what's under there. So yeah, it's not like I expected at all, but I think that's probably because I work in the city, which it is a very different job, I would say.
Fabulous. It's good to know that, you know, there's that different sort of setting and perspective, and you can tailor to sort of your interests in that sort of field that you're looking at. So very insightful, thank you. For Anya, we've got a question from Emma here saying, how do you stay calm when you're dealing with significant crisis in your work?
I think it mainly comes from experience. So at first, I started this job 13 months ago today, actually. It's the 7th of June. But at first it was just panic, and I was shadowing my colleagues, and they were always just staying calm, and I was like, how do you do it? But it is a case of experience, and you see things. So I see things in a case that I picked up today that I've seen in the future. So it's just drawing on that experience. And you also need to kind of portray calmness to your client who is going through that crisis and living the crisis. But yeah, just a case of experience and practice.
Fabulous, thank you very much. So George, obviously, you know, you've had a very busy morning this morning with everything going on in the government. So, you know, a lot of worry often of students is sort of how they cope with stress, or, you know, within their roles, you know, those demanding times. So we've had a really interesting question here from Bethany. If there were any parts of your job that you would change?
I think for me, it can be hard sometimes. We do a lot of stakeholder management, I think, and you've got to play, so you don't play both sides, but you have to collect different points of view. We work with a lot of senior people from sort of industry and across government, and they don't always line up on what they want to achieve. And I think that can be quite stressful at the time to sort of like, eventually you've got to make a call, and that call comes down to you, and then you're responsible for it if it goes wrong. Yeah, I guess it's not so much unfulfilling, but I think it'd be quite nice to be less stressed. I don't know. So that's not answered your question at all. Sorry. Largely I think the civil service is quite a fulfilling place to work. You've got the sort of hums and drums of like, you've got to send emails, you've got to make PowerPoints and slide decks, but you'll have that in any job. So I think as long as the content is quite interesting, you're engaged on that, then you'll probably be quite fulfilled in whatever you're doing. So again, not really answering your question.
I think that's a great answer. I think, that worry is always there. You're going to find a job stressful, but if there are things that you engage with, the things that you're sort of interested in, just like Anya, not wanting to work in cyber, but then ending up, really engaging with it, you'll always find the bits that you're interested in and make the most of them. Kathy, George has just mentioned there about, stakeholder management and sort of working with different people and mediating, a big skill that you'll develop at university throughout the many, many group work projects and things that you'll be doing as part of your degree. But you mentioned, going to conferences and presenting, at 23, and a skill that a lot of students are often worried about throughout their degree is that sort of presenting and public speaking. So do you have any sort of top tips on that? Anything that you've gained from doing conferences and public speaking?
I would say beforehand, I used to be a very nervous speaker, but I had to do it quite a lot, especially during my master's. We had one lecturer that made us do a presentation, write an essay and do a presentation every single week, as if we were at Oxford Uni, which was stressful a little bit. But that really helped me, and it is experience, but it's also just know your subject inside out. So if someone asks you an awkward question, you're the leading authority on it, so you know what to say. And also, if you don't know the answer, just say you don't know the answer. But I'd say I use that in my job all the time as well, because I've got to talk to lots of different people and keep everyone. I've got to keep an engineer happy. I've got to keep my project manager happy. I've got to keep the site manager happy. So you need to know how to kind of like keep everyone happy. And I'd say I've got that confidence to do that from uni also, and just being a people person.
Perfect, thank you very much. Exactly right, that communication and practice, knowing your subject, being prepared. For Anya, we've got a question here from Jessica. How big is the jump from A-level history to degree level? How did you find that transition?
It is difficult. It's a history degree at Newcastle University. It shouldn't be easy. But if you're there, you've deserved to be there. So definitely remember that. It's difficult. You're writing essays, you've got tutors and lecturers who will be difficult to please. You have to work hard. There's new ways of writing when you're writing a university degree compared to one that you do in your A-levels. So be prepared to work hard. I don't want to say it's really easy and you're going to turn around and get a first in your first submission, but if you put that work in, it's all worthwhile. It's really fulfilling. You get a fantastic degree at the end. So to summarize, it's difficult, it's a big jump, but it's well worth it, and you have to put the work in, and you'd be very pleased if you do that and you achieve success.
Perfect, thank you. So George, I asked you about sort of what was challenging about your role, but Katie's asked, what's the best part about working for the civil service?
So I think there's two things that jump out on this one. One is the scale. I can't think of like a company where at my age I'd be responsible or be involved on, at DFE, I think the annual spend was something like 107 billion. My portfolio this year is 350 billion pound. Like, think of a company that's got sort of that spend, and then we're not going to let a 23-year-old have sort of like strategic level input into it. Obviously, we're accountable for governance and there's processes and there's senior people involved, but like the level of work you can get involved with is really, really cool on the scale of it, just because of the nature of what the civil service is. I absolutely love that. I don't think you could get that in the private sector. And then secondly, the culture is absolutely wonderful. The people are genuinely some of the nicest, happiest, most fulfilled people I've ever met. Obviously, you're going to have some, it's not perfect for everyone, but there's a genuine focus in the civil service on making it a good place to work, because we can't pay competitive salaries in the same way that the private sector can, and you sort of, because you can't pay large salaries, you have to focus on the people, and that's how you sort of have retention and retain skills. And so there's a real focus on that. It really does show. It is a wonderful place to work.
Perfect, thank you very much. We've had a question here that I'll comment on. So what type of careers does history typically lead to? And I think that from the panel of the day, you can see the huge diversity that you've got, and that's just sort of from 3 of our graduates. You can go and work in museums and galleries, you work in the public sector, you can work in tech. I think the really important thing about university is getting involved, trying things out. Both George and Anya didn't think that they were going to end up where they were going to sort of start from. They had a surprise with cybersecurity and working in the civil service, for example. So it's really about thinking about what you enjoy, trying things out. And a lot of that comes through all the extracurriculars that you can get involved in at university. And we have had a question here, which, I'll let you all comment on, because you all had very busy university experiences between sort of societies and internships and placement years and part-time jobs. So we've got a question here from Melissa saying, have you got any tips for balancing all those extracurriculars alongside your studies? Kathy, we'll come to you first, and then we'll go Anya and George.
So I actually worked my entire way through university, right up until I got that paid internship at the very end. I worked at Topshop when it used to be a thing in Eldon Square. I had a 4-hour contract, but I often would work 3 shifts, so 4 hours was the shift generally. And over Christmas, they'd try and get you to work more hours. Sometimes it would suit you, but obviously during that exam period, it didn't suit me. There's a few times I had to put my foot down and be like, look, I'm on a 4-hour contract, I don't want to work anymore. But I'd say on the whole, it really benefited me because, 1, I had this extra cash to go and do what I wanted with. And 2, it made me treat university like a job. So for me, I worked 8 till 4 every day because I'm a morning person, get up early, go to the library, go to my lectures. And then I had my evenings and weekends to myself, which is when I'd work. And it made me focus on it. And I think there was a brief period of like 2 months where I didn't work. I just kind of did what I wanted, and everything turned into a bit of a shambles because I didn't have that structure. So for me, it was actually really, really beneficial to have a job. And also, I think it looks good on your CV. And also my lecturers I had one of them say to me, he was really impressed with my time management. And that's why he got me the paid internship. I don't say got me, but like helped me get the paid internship because he realised that I wanted to work and it helped me. So that was another example of, if you're a hard worker, it is recognised. And he said he always used to tell his first years about me working hard and juggling everything, which warmed my heart a bit.
Perfect. Anya, anything to add there?
I don't think so. I think that was everything was pretty spot on there. Structure, definitely, and that's I think in my job today, it's having structure that helps you to achieve, what you've got to do each day, planning your day, planning your week. Self-discipline, looking at what you need to achieve and kind of working out timelines for when that needs to be achieved and how you're going to achieve it. Balancing your priorities, so like making sure that you're getting everything done at uni, but also taking some time away and socializing and relaxing, because that's going to help you in the long term to achieve what you need to do. But pretty much just echo what Kathy said there.
Yeah, probably nailed it. Especially like Anya's point around sort of like timelines and working out when things are due and giving yourself the right amount of time. And there's a law, I can't remember what it's called, but basically work will take the time you've assigned to it. So if you give yourself 8 weeks to write an essay, that essay will take 8 weeks and you'll stress yourself out for 8 weeks and it'll be in your head for 8 weeks and detracting from other stuff in your life. Whereas you could probably achieve the same in like 4 weeks, for example. Obviously, there's a point where like if you only give yourself 1 week, you're probably not going to turn out the same quality essay. But it's about like, don't overthink stuff and be rigorous with your timelines and sort of sticking to them. The rest of your life will benefit so much from it.
Perfect. I think, it's understanding the way you work and how you manage your time. I know for myself, if I have got, just a nice, easy workload, I'm going to procrastinate. I like to fill my time and be as busy as possible. So I make sure that I do what I need to at different times. So sometimes all those extracurriculars and part-time jobs can be tough to balance, but can make you more productive. So it's working out how you sort of work best for yourself. Right, I'm going to ask one last question to our speakers here, and that is, considering our audience, students who are embarking on their studies in history, classics and archaeology, hopefully in September, think about your sort of time at university and your career, and what would be your one top tip for those in the audience. And we'll go Kathy, Anya and George again.
Top tip would be to join in with as much as possible. This is more of a social one really, and meet as many people as possible. So I actually met one of my best friends on one of the archaeology side trips in Rome. She was on history, I was on ancient history, so we've never really met there. And until last year, I was living with her. So, and all my best friends that I see every single week are through university, through societies, through the course. So I just say go meet as many people as possible because they will be your friends for life. And for me, that's the most important thing.
Anya?
So don't put too much pressure on yourself to achieve really, to be the best in your cohort, to make loads of friends in the first week. Take time, consider your options. Things take practice. Don't be afraid of failure as well. For me personally, that's how I learn the best. Really doing something wrong and learning from my mistakes. And another one, which is like technology linked, take a backup of everything that you've got, and that's advice that I give to clients every day. If you're writing an essay or if you're writing a job application, that's quite a good example, because if you're writing a job application on the website that you're applying to, and you lose that and you haven't got a backup, then you've lost everything, all the work that you've done. If you write an essay and you spill a drink on your laptop, and you haven't got a backup like on the cloud, then that's gone. So take a backup, because there's so many, I'm sure we've all heard of examples of people who've lost work because they've lost the one copy that they've got.
Very, very good sage advice there. George, anything from you?
Yeah, I'd say just engage with everything. I think you're at uni, like if you're not like go to your lectures, do the reading, you will get so much more out of the experience through engagement. Of course, the lecturers, especially in HTA, are some of the most wonderful, like proactive people you'll ever meet, and anything you need, they'll happily help you out with. And especially post-uni, everything these days is recruited based on behaviours, no matter where you're applying. And they don't want like just the CV, they actually want like how you can demonstrate that you're a good team player, or you're critical thinker or whatever. And if you've not engaged with the course, and you're probably not going, and like societies as well, you're probably not going to be able to demonstrate that. So it's like, one, you'll have a better experience, and two, you'll set yourself up for more success afterwards.
Perfect. That echoes exactly what we want you to take from, the whole of the Partner Summer School and your Careers and Employability module is essentially come to university, have fun, get involved, do lots of things, meet lots of people, come in, sort of get support from the career service and engage with your school. That is what, makes your university experience and enhances your employability. So thank you all for joining us and asking some really, really insightful questions. Thank you to Kathy, George and Anya for taking the time and volunteering an hour today to sort of speak to our students. It's all been really insightful, and we've got some wonderful tips from you. But thank you very, very much, and we'll wrap up the session now.